Hi, this is Matt Drake with Western Rivers Fly Fisher. I'm going to show you my green drake emerger today. This is a hackle stacker pattern, and it runs half nymph, half dry, but fishes really well, and I've used it on the Provo, the Henry's Fork, a couple of different places. You can do a lot of color variations and do sizes with this as well, so it's more versatile than just a green drake pattern. So to start off, I have a bent shank nymph hook, which is kind of like the stonefly size hook or style hook. They're a little heavy, so I add some additional flotation to it. But first, the body is fairly simple. We're just going to take 3 different colors of ostrich. I'm going to use tan, brown, and the natural. So I'm going to cut 3 of those loose. They don't need to be a particular size, but full is nice, so it builds out a nice body. To do this fly, we're going to need some ostrich. We're going to need a little bit of appropriate color dubbing, which could be olive or could be brown, depending on what species of drake you happen to be looking at, whether it's a grandis or a coloradensis. Not to get all techie, but first we're going to start our thread on the back half of the fly, and we're going to bring it down to the bend of the hook. And we'll trim off here. We'll see how much coffee I've had today. This ought to be fun to watch. If it's shaking, it's the cameraman, not me. So the first thing we do is even the tips of the 3 ostrich curls so that they're all about the same length. They don't need to be perfect, but 3 together like so. And then I'm going to measure them against the shank. I want them to be about, let's say ½ inch long beyond the hook bend, so like so. I'm just going to tie all 3 of them down at the same time in one spot. I'll get that locked in here. And then I actually take and pull them back, fold them over, move it back just a smidge further. We'll set those aside for the moment. I'm going to put a small dubbed underbody just to fill out the body shape of a green drake. They're a fairly sizable mayfly, so they need a little extra. So what we're going to do is just spin a little. This is antron dubbing. It could be hare's ear, whatever you like, as long as it builds up a little bit of bulk. Yeah. Just spinning a little on here. Again, I'm not too particular about color because this is going to be covered. It's mainly just to build up the body. Bring this forward. Trying to get that mayfly taper where it's a little fatter towards the middle of the fly. Didn't quite get enough there. Always better to add too little and go back versus add too much and have to remove. So we're going to spin a little more on there. And go to where that bend of the hook is. Just a smidge more. These little guys are he-men, so we want to have some weight. And then I'm going to reverse my thread, bring it back down. I'm going to use a trick that Terry Okahashi showed me a couple years ago that I've really liked. Make sure that the tails are not twisted in with the body here. And we're going to take and wrap the thread around those 3 ostrich curls towards the front about 5 times. This makes handling the ostrich extremely easy. And we'll wrap forward. You want to put even pressure on them, and if they start to get clumped, make sure you brush them out just a little bit. So we wrap forward, we get that nice body that's going to have some good movement to it. Tie off there. Now the beauty of this is you can actually let go of those at that point because they're wrapped with the thread, and it keeps them from springing out too badly most of the time. Wrap that off. A couple of turns there. And we're going to trim this excess. And you can actually use those again if you like. I like the tapered look better, but from a tire standpoint, you're using a lot of ostrich for a small fly. Okay, so the next step we're going to do is set up the hackle stacker loop. And a hackle stacker is basically it's a folded over parachute. They're extremely durable. They don't get chewed on by the fish because they're protected. And they're really nice to tie. So we take some 5X monofilament, tie that on top of the hook shank. Make sure you get a bunch of good, strong, securing wraps on it. Because you don't want this to come apart. These things are very durable if they're tied right. Okay, trim the butt ends off. And so we have a small loop that we can hold in our fingers there. Now we're going to take, I'm just going to do this with a grizzly hackle. There's a lot of different options you could use, like a light dyed grizzly would be, or light olive dyed grizzly was nice for some flies. I'm going to use this grizzly hackle. I'm going to bring it back a little bit. and I'm going to offset the hackle on the stem so that if you can see that one side, the near side, is further up this or down the stem than it is on the other side. That helps make the first couple of wraps real even. We're going to tie those in at the same point, or so that the bare stem is at the same point of the hackle stacker loop. I have too much thread here, but I'm not using my own kit today, so I tend to be a little sloppier. And I just leave that stem there for the moment. If I need to redo it, it's easier to handle later. Now we go up the hackle stacker loop, and the amount of turns varies based on the size of the fly. Uh-oh, looks like my hackle's breaking here. I'm going to replace that hackle because it's starting to crack on the stem here. This is an older, not so good hackle. Ideally, these are usually saddles. This is a Cape feather. They're a little thicker at the base and harder to work with. However, that's no excuse. This should work fine. So, once again, I'm going to offset. We'll go up on the hackle just a little further. And tie in again. And hopefully this will bend a little better. This is, like I said, I prefer this to be a saddle hackle because they're a little thinner, but this one should do the job. So we wrap up the loop, push it down every now and then. It starts to spring forward. We're going to go up about 3/8 of an inch or so, and then we're going to work our way right back down through the hackle stacker loop towards the base of the loop. When we get there, we're going to pull the hackle stacker loop back and the hackle stem forward and tie it down. And at this point, it's a pretty durable setup, so we're just going to trim the excess off. Had enough coffee, I think. Take the excess off. This is all going to be covered in a moment anyway, so. And I'm going to do a simple version of this. I'm not going to add an additional overwing this time, but you can add a wing, and if anybody's interested in it, I can show you how to do that later. But we are going to just do a quick foam thorax here. This is based off of a Bob Quigley pattern that he uses for calibrated, or that I saw when I was first learning hackle stacker patterns. So we're going to take this foam, cut it into a point, and we're going to tie it down on top of the hackle stacker loop right at even with it. And we will take our thread, work it forward. We're going to take the foam and then wrap it 1.5 times around the hook shank. So once here, like so. Let's see, this might be a little bit on the thin side, but we'll give it a whirl. Let's get everything out of the way. Pull this back. Now we're going to crisscross over the top of this a couple of times, tying it in right at the base there. Now, when we pull the hackle stacker loop over the top, it's going to cover up all this and hide it, so it doesn't need to look perfect. It just needs to be in good shape. This gives you a little bit of additional flotation, makes the fly pretty bulletproof. Okay, then we're going to take our hackle stacker loop, fold those hackles back. Now notice they were fairly oversized. This is about a size 8 hackle on about a size 12 hook. We're going to take and capture the monofilament loop loosely up in front here. And then these flies are also called pullover flies, and for kind of obvious reasons, you pull this over the top, pull this tight, and you can push the hackles down and out to the sides. I usually do that. And normally I'll add a drop of head cement to the center of the hackles, and that'll keep them splayed out to the sides, but I'm not going to probably show you that because I don't have any head cement sitting in front of me. Work your thread backwards towards the thorax area a little ways, so you've got a little bit of room to fold that monofilament loop backwards without sliding over the front of the hackle, or over the front of the mono. Make a couple of turns to lock it down. Go in and grab the tag ends and trim those off, and then you are basically ready to whip finish. And let me find my whip finisher here. Now, I almost always whip finish my flies twice. It just gives you some insurance and makes it so you don't need to use quite so much glue, but it gives you a very durable tie-in point. And trim it off. You've got a very easy to tie emerging green drake. The body of this fly should sit in the water with the thorax sticking out, and it fishes extremely well. Like I said, both Provo, Weber, wherever you might find green drakes, Henry's Fork as well. So thanks for your time. Hope you enjoyed the video. Feel free to try it out, and if you guys have any questions on it, just give us a shout and we'll answer them. So thanks. Have a good day.